really good. And I want to thank everyone. Love their yours.
Have you ever experienced a moment so profound, so raw, that it feels as though the entire universe has paused just to witness it? For Sharon Osbourne, that moment came on a quiet morning in their Buckinghamshire home, a morning that would forever redefine what it meant to love, to lose, and to live. The world had been shaken for weeks, maybe even months, by the news that Ozzy Osbourne, the legendary rock icon, was facing the most challenging days of his life. His music had always been larger than life, his persona loud, chaotic, unforgettable. Fans knew him as the Prince of Darkness, a whirlwind of stage lights and screaming guitars, a man who had survived decades of excess, addiction, and fame. Yet, in the confines of a sunlit room filled with family photographs, his final words revealed a man entirely unseen by the world, a man whose heart and soul had been quietly devoted to one person for more than 50 years, Sharon. That morning, July 22, 2025, began like any other. Soft light poured through the windows, falling on a home steeped in decades of memories, laughter, and love. For Sharon, it was a morning heavy with both anticipation and fear, a morning that carried the weight of everything they had ever shared. Ozzy had been unresponsive for nearly 24 hours, his body weakened by Parkinson's disease and the toll of a lifetime spent chasing music, life, and sometimes his own demons. The world outside was buzzing with rumors, speculation, the endless hum of social media and news outlets trying to capture what no one could truly understand. But inside that room, time was slower, heavier, sacred. Sharon sat by his side, holding his hand, watching, waiting, fearing the moment when the man who had been her partner, her protector, her love, might finally slip away. And then, as if pulled by a force beyond comprehension, his eyes opened. The shock was immediate, piercing. For weeks, months, years even, she had watched the disease slowly strip him of his energy, his focus, his words. And yet in that moment, Ozzy's eyes were sharp, clear, and alive. He looked at her, and Sharon felt as though the universe itself had taken a breath. There was a strength in his gaze that defied every struggle he had endured, every challenge the world had thrown at him. "Sharon," he said, his voice soft but steady, the sound of it cutting through the silence like a blade. "Come closer. I need to tell you something important." Those words, simple yet monumental, shattered the fragile calm that had settled around her. Sharon leaned in, her heart pounding, knowing instinctively that this was not a casual conversation. This was not small talk. This was a final message, a culmination of decades of love, loss, struggle, triumph, and devotion. The room, filled with the quiet presence of their shared life, seemed to hum with anticipation. Wedding photos smiled down from the walls. Portraits of their children lined the shelves, each image a testament to the life they had built together. Every photograph, every memory, every quiet Sunday morning and chaotic rock concert seemed to wait alongside them, bearing witness to the words that were about to be spoken. And then he spoke. Not of fame, not of fortune, not of the world that had watched him from a distance. He spoke of life, of love, of gratitude. "Do you realize what we've done, Sharon?" he asked. "Do you understand the miracle we've created together?" Sharon could feel the weight of the words in every fiber of her being. She knew instinctively that this was not a fleeting thought, not a moment of weakness. The news spread like wildfire. Her children panicked. Lawyers called. Old friends begged her to reconsider. They warned that airing private truths would destroy what was left of her family's legacy. Sharon didn't flinch. "The legacy was never mine," she said. "I'm finally writing one that is." As she wrote, she refused to sanitize the truth. Page after page, she detailed the years of manipulation, the small betrayals disguised as romance, the way fame had become both armor and cage. She wrote about the silence between the shouting, the invisible bruises that came from holding everything together. But she also wrote about her awakening, the moment she realized she could survive without the chaos she'd been told she needed. The book wasn't an attack. It was an exorcism. The publishing team tried to convince her to tone it down. "It's too raw," they said. "Too personal." Sharon smiled faintly. "That's the point." She refused to edit her truth into something palatable. She'd spent her whole life packaging pain for public consumption. This time, it was for her. When the family tried to intervene, she met them with quiet steel. "I have nothing left to lose except myself," she said, "and I'm done losing her." That line would later become the tagline of the book. Plastered across billboards and quoted on talk shows, the backlash was immediate and ferocious. Fans accused her of betraying Ozzy's memory. Others praised her for her courage. Debates erupted online. Was Sharon Osbourne rewriting history or reclaiming it? She didn't participate. She let the book speak for itself. And when it hit the shelves, something extraordinary happened. It sold out in 3 days. Messages poured in from women around the world. Letters, emails, videos from those who had spent years dimming their own light for someone else. They called her a mirror, a permission slip, a revolution. For the first time in her life, Sharon wasn't managing anyone's voice but her own, and it was roaring. She began touring, not as a celebrity widow but as a speaker. She stood on stages in front of women half her age and told them the truth no one had told her. Love should not require your disappearance. The audiences cried, cheered, and rose to their feet. It wasn't fame she was feeling this time. It was freedom echoing back to her. Her days became simple, almost monastic. Early mornings writing, long walks, producing documentaries about resilience. She adopted 2 dogs from a shelter. She traveled alone for the first time in her life, to Japan, checking off the last dream from that list she'd written in her 20s. She wandered through Tokyo at night, unrecognized, unguarded, anonymous. And for the first time, she felt entirely her own. Back home, the industry began to shift its narrative. Sharon was no longer introduced as Ozzy Osbourne's wife. She was the founder of Ironbird, the author of The Woman Who Stayed Too Long, the icon of late-life reinvention. Her story became a masterclass in reclamation, a blueprint for anyone who had spent their life as a supporting character. But the truest transformation was private. In the quiet of her mornings, she often stood by her window and watched the light change across the skyline. It reminded her of something she'd once said in an interview years ago, that she was Ozzy's shadow. Now, she finally understood the truth. She had never been a shadow. She'd been the light, steady, and constant, only dimmed by the storm that surrounded her. When asked in an interview if she forgave him, she paused. "Forgiveness isn't a gift you give someone who hurt you," she said. "It's what you give yourself so they can't live in your head anymore." Her children came around slowly. Jack called after reading the final chapter. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking, "I didn't know." Sharon smiled through the phone. "You weren't supposed to," she said. "I didn't either, not until it was over." Kelly sent her a message months later. "I get it now. You just wanted peace." Sharon replied, "That's all I ever wanted." The book became a phenomenon, not because it was scandalous, but because it was honest. It became the anthem for women who had spent decades serving everyone but themselves. Critics called it raw, uncomfortable, necessary. Sharon didn't care about reviews. The letters from readers meant more than any bestseller list ever could. Her final public appearance of the year was at a women's conference in London. The stage was minimalist, 1 chair, 1 microphone. The audience of thousands fell silent as she walked out, her posture straight, her presence commanding. No dramatics, no tears, just truth. "It took me 71 years to meet myself," she said, her voice steady. "Don't make her wait that long." The crowd erupted, not just in applause, but in the sound of recognition. That night, back in her hotel room, she removed her jewelry, wiped away her makeup, and sat by the window, the city glittering below. The woman staring back at her in the glass wasn't the manager, the wife, the caretaker, or the survivor. She was simply Sharon, whole, unborrowed, and entirely her own. The box that had started it all now sat on her desk, not as a reminder of loss, but as a monument to rediscovery. Inside, she'd placed 1 new item, a handwritten note on fresh paper that read, "I am finally keeping myself." And as the lights of London flickered against the night sky, she whispered the words she wished someone had told her long ago, words that now belonged to every woman who'd ever forgotten her own name in someone else's story. You were never meant to be someone's shadow. You were always the light. If Sharon's story reached you, if you've ever lost yourself inside someone else's storm, this is your moment to stop surviving and start reclaiming. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for tragedy. Don't wait for the world to tell you who you are. Stand up, speak your truth. Walk away from what dims your light and rebuild your life on your own terms. Because like Sharon, you are not someone's shadow. You are the light. Share this story, tell yours, and remind every woman who forgot herself, it's never too late to begin again. These words were deliberate, chosen carefully, crafted from the deepest part of a man who had spent a lifetime hiding behind personas, performances, and chaos. "For so long," she whispered, "I thought I knew you. I thought I had seen every side of you. But this is different." And it was. In that moment, Ozzy was not the Prince of Darkness, the rock star, the legend. He was simply a man, a husband, a father, a soul reflecting on the life he had shared with the woman who had stood by him through it all. He spoke of their first meeting, the brokenness he had carried, the fears and insecurities he had never dared to voice. "When I first met you," he said, his voice trembling with the weight of memory, "I was just a man pretending to know how to love, pretending to know how to live. And then you came along and everything changed." Sharon felt tears sting her eyes as he continued. "You saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. You believed in me when I couldn't even believe in myself. And I love you so much that you became the man I always dreamed of being." Every word was a revelation, a testament to a love that had endured more than 4 decades, surviving addiction, illness, fame, and the relentless march of time. Ozzy recalled moments she had long forgotten, details she hadn't even realized had mattered. The song playing when they first met, the outfit she wore, the way the sunlight had hit the room. He remembered the smallest things with a clarity that made the heart ache, a reminder of the depth of his presence, even in a world that often demanded distraction and spectacle. "Before I met you," he said, his voice breaking slightly, "I only knew how to survive. After meeting you, I finally learned how to live." Sharon's chest tightened. She had lived beside him, watched him, loved him, and yet here was a side of Ozzy that the world had never known. A man whose gratitude, humility, and deep love now poured forth without reservation. And then he turned to the moments that had caused them both pain, the chapters they had endured but rarely spoke of. Addiction had nearly torn them apart. Missteps, regrets, and absences had left scars, not just on him but on her, on their family. Yet in his words, there was no defensiveness, no justification, only acknowledgement, only truth. "I was so lost in my own pain," he admitted, "that I didn't see how much I had hurt you. You loved me when I didn't deserve it, when I couldn't even see the man you saw." Sharon felt the full weight of his confession, but it was not sorrow that filled her, nor anger, nor resentment. It was relief. It was recognition that after all these years, after all the trials, he had finally said what needed to be said. "Every good thing we've accomplished," he continued, "every song, every moment of happiness, every triumph, it's because of you. You shaped me, guided me, held me, believed in me. Without you, none of it would have mattered." And it was true. Sharon had always been his anchor, the force that kept him grounded while the world pulled him in 1,000 directions. She had been his partner in every sense, loving, protecting, guiding, and sacrificing. And now, in these final moments, he was giving her the acknowledgement she had never sought, but deeply deserved. They spoke of their children, Kelly, Jack, Amy, of the hopes and fears he carried for them, of the mistakes he had made, and of the love he had always felt. He confessed to regrets, moments when he had failed to be present, moments when his own struggles had overshadowed the needs of those he loved most. "I am not the father I hoped to be," he said quietly, "but I hope I was the father you needed when it mattered most." Sharon felt a flood of emotions, pride, sorrow, gratitude, and a love so deep it seemed almost unbearable. But he did not dwell on guilt or grief. Instead, he focused on what mattered: love, presence, connection, and legacy. He reminded her that their life together, with all its chaos and brilliance, was a miracle, a testament to the power of enduring love and unwavering commitment. And then he spoke of the future, of her life, of her choices, of the freedom she would need once he was gone. "Promise me," he said, "that you will not stop living. Travel, laugh, create, and embrace whatever joy comes your way. Even if one day you love someone else, I want you to be happy. Our love doesn't end with death. It changes, but it remains." Sharon felt her heart both shatter and expand in the same moment. Here was a man at the edge of life, thinking not of himself but of her freedom, of her happiness. And she realized, in a way that was both terrifying and comforting, that this love, this connection, was eternal. They spoke of the small moments that had built their life. Quiet mornings with tea, long walks in the garden, evenings spent in laughter and conversation. Moments that seemed ordinary but were, in truth, extraordinary. Each memory was a thread in the tapestry of their love, And now, in these final exchanges, those threads wove together into something luminous, something beyond words. Sharon remembered the way he looked at her, the way his hand held hers, the way his eyes reflected decades of shared joy, sorrow, triumph, and endurance. It was as if time had slowed, as if the world outside had melted away, leaving only the two of them in a cocoon of love that defied every limitation. And through it all, he spoke with clarity, gratitude, and devotion. He thanked her for every sacrifice, every battle she had fought quietly by his side, every moment she had chosen love over despair, hope over resignation. "You have been my shield and my sword," he said. "You protected me, guided me, and loved me when it was not easy. And I want you to know, none of it was ever wasted or unappreciated." Sharon felt the tears streaming down her face, but they were not tears of sadness alone. They were tears of recognition, of awe, of understanding that what they shared was larger than either of them, larger than fame, larger than the world's perception of them. He spoke of mortality, of the inevitability of leaving this life, yet with no fear in his words, only acceptance. "I am not afraid," he said softly. "I have experienced the greatest gift of all. Your love, our family, this life we built together. Nothing else matters. Nothing can take this away from me." And in that moment, Sharon felt the truth of every day they had spent together, every trial they had endured, every laugh, every argument, every kiss, every tear. Love was not just an emotion. It was a force, a choice, a legacy. It was what would endure when everything else fell away. Sharon's chest ached with the weight of his words. She held him, trembling, feeling every heartbeat, every breath, every syllable as though they were a lifeline. And he, in turn, held her gaze, each word a final gift, a message of gratitude, love, and hope that would carry her through the days, months, and years ahead. He reminded her that even in absence, love remains, transforms, and guides. That the bonds forged in life do not dissolve in death, but continue infinitely, silently, beautifully. Sharon listened, heart full, tears streaming, soul expanded, as Ozzy spoke with the strength, vulnerability, and truth of a man who had lived fully, loved deeply, and finally found peace. And as the sunlight fell across their faces, illuminating the photographs and memories around them, Sharon realized this was more than a goodbye. This was a roadmap, a lesson, a declaration, a love letter that spanned a lifetime, written in words, gestures, and unspoken understanding. Every note of apology, every declaration of love, every acknowledgement of sacrifice, every blessing for the future was a symphony of devotion, and Sharon felt as though the world itself had stopped to hear it. And in that stillness, she knew that this love, this final conversation, would shape the rest of her life. It would guide her steps, her decisions, her understanding of family, commitment, and the enduring power of connection. The voice of Ozzy Osbourne, so often known for its power, rebellion, and raw energy, now resonated with a tenderness that few had ever heard. A truth so simple yet so profound: love is what endures. Love is what remains, and love is the ultimate gift. Sharon held his hand, feeling the warmth, the presence, the essence of the man she had shared everything with, knowing that every word spoken, every breath taken, every moment witnessed would stay with her forever. A treasure beyond measure, a legacy of love that death could never diminish. She could feel the echo of his life in her own, a pulse that would never fade, a song that would continue, softly, eternally, in every heartbeat, every memory, every choice she made from that moment onward. The room was still. The world outside continued its relentless rhythm, but inside, time had slowed to a breathless hush. Sharon sat alone, her hand still resting on the spot where Ozzy had been moments before, a place that now held only the echo of his presence. And yet, even in the emptiness, she felt him, not as a ghost, not as a shadow, but as a peace that wrapped around her like a warm, familiar blanket. He wasn't gone. He had only become something else, something larger than the sum of his years, something eternal. The grief that had weighed on her chest felt heavier than anything she had ever known, yet beneath it was a strange, luminous calm, a quiet understanding that the love they had shared was not constrained by mortality. It lingered, persistent and tender, whispering across the air in ways words could barely touch. She remembered his final request, his plea that had carried more weight than anything else in his life. "Promise me you'll live, Sharon. Don't stop when I'm gone." At first, the words had felt impossible. How could she imagine a life without him, without the force that had anchored her for decades? The world was suddenly too vast, too empty, too quiet. Yet as she breathed, letting the words sink into the deepest chambers of her heart, she realized that this promise was not a burden. It was a purpose, a compass for the days, months, and years that would follow. Sharon's tears fell freely, but they were no longer only tears of sorrow. They were tears of awakening, a recognition that Ozzy's final gift to her was freedom. Freedom to grieve, freedom to love, freedom to live fully, and freedom to carry the essence of their bond into every moment that remained. He had asked her to celebrate, not to mourn. "Play music," he had whispered. "Laugh loud. Remember the madness." And so she did, in private first, then in public, honoring him in every note, every heartbeat, every breath. His funeral, a celebration unlike any other, was not a somber retreat into shadows. It was a symphony of life, a gathering of souls that had loved him, cheered for him, and been moved by him across generations. Guitars wailed, laughter echoed, tears fell, and through it all Sharon could feel him smiling, approving, present in every vibration of sound and memory. Fans around the world, countless in number, lit candles, played his music, and shared stories, each person unknowingly carrying a fragment of his final message. That life, love, and connection were what mattered most. Behind every scream, every chaotic performance, every headline and rumor, there had been a man who longed simply to be understood, to be loved, to love in return. Sharon held a private note he had left for the world, a testament to that truth. He had written that he wanted to be remembered not as the Prince of Darkness, the wild man on stage, but as someone who had loved fiercely, who had been loved, and who had tried every day to leave a footprint of kindness in the lives of those he touched. He had said, "Behind every scream was a man just trying to be heard," and those words now carried a resonance that spanned continents, generations, and hearts. As Sharon sat in the quiet of their home, she recalled the small, intimate moments that had shaped their life together. The tea she brought him in bed when he was tired or sick. The long walks through their garden where words were sometimes unnecessary. The Sunday mornings where the world could wait while they simply existed together. These were the memories that healed, that reminded her that love is built in silence as much as in chaos, that permanence is often found in ordinary moments quietly cherished. She reflected on the sacrifices she had made, the hidden strength that had guided them both through decades of public scrutiny and private struggles. She had been the shield and the sword, the quiet force that allowed him to fly while keeping the family grounded, the presence that absorbed the storms of life so that he could face the world without fear. And now, in his acknowledgement, "You were my shield and my sword," she found a healing power unlike any she had ever known. Those words became a mantra, an affirmation of the strength inherent in her love, a reminder that the battles she had fought were not unseen, unappreciated, or meaningless. They had mattered, and they would continue to matter, carried forward in every heartbeat, every choice, every step she took into the future. Ozzy had spoken of their children with the same reverence, the same unflinching honesty. He wanted them to understand that perfection was not the goal, but kindness, integrity, and love were. "You don't have to be perfect," he had said, his voice gentle but firm. "Just be kind, and love deeply." Sharon's heart swelled at the thought that these words were not merely instructions but a legacy, a framework for their lives long after he was gone. She recalled his pride when he spoke of Kelly, Jack, and Amy, their triumphs, their flaws, their growth. He had acknowledged his absences, his failings, yet had emphasized his unwavering belief in their strength and resilience. For Sharon, this was the ultimate reminder that love endures beyond human imperfection, that the bonds forged in family, in shared struggle and joy, are unshakable. And then came the philosophy that would guide Sharon for the rest of her life. Love, he had said, is not simply a feeling. It is a choice made every day, even when it is hard, even when it is inconvenient, even when it is inconvenient to the ego or to pride. It is a conscious act, a commitment renewed daily, he had explained, his words ringing in her ears long after the room had quieted. This realization reshaped her understanding of the life they had built together. Love was active, deliberate, and transformative. It was the lens through which every memory, every relationship, every decision would now be understood. Months later, Sharon returned to that same room, the walls lined with photographs, the faint traces of music lingering in the air. This time she was not steeped in mourning. She was steeped in reflection, gratitude, and purpose. She began to write, pouring her emotions into words that honored life rather than lamented loss. The pen became an instrument of freedom, a way to channel the lessons Ozzy had left behind, the guidance embedded in his final moments. She realized finally that his gift to her had been more than love. It had been the permission to live, to feel, to exist fully in the aftermath of absence. "He taught me that love doesn't end with death," she whispered to herself, the words almost sacred. "It transforms into something eternal." When she finally addressed the world, sharing her grief and gratitude publicly for the first time since his passing, her voice trembled yet carried authority. "Ozzy's music will live forever," she said, tears glinting in the corners of her eyes. "But his greatest song was the life we built together." She spoke of cherishing love while it could still be held, forgiving before resentment could root, and living fully because life was fleeting and fragile. Her message resonated not just as a tribute to Ozzy, but as a call to action for every heart listening, a reminder that time is fleeting, that love is sacred, and that the ordinary moments often hold the extraordinary. In quiet reflection, she traced her hand over the family photos, lingering on the sunlit faces of Ozzy, their children, and herself. She touched the ring he had always worn, the symbol of devotion and unity, feeling both loss and presence in the same breath. "I'll see you on the other side, my love," she whispered, her voice steady now, but not too soon. Music rose softly in the background, an instrumental version of "Mama, I'm coming home," weaving through the air like a gentle caress, an echo of life, love, and memory that refused to fade. Sharon felt the weight of every lesson, every memory, every act of love that had defined their years together. She understood now that Ozzy's final words were not simply a farewell. They were a roadmap, a blueprint for living fully, fiercely and compassionately, for honoring love in all its forms, for embracing the sacred in the everyday. In that room, with the light falling across the photographs, across the traces of music, across the small details of a life fully lived, Sharon understood that the Prince of Darkness had left a gift far greater than fame or fortune. He had left light, eternal, luminous, and guiding, and in that light she would continue, carrying the legacy forward, one breath, one choice, one act of love at a time. The whispers of his presence, the echo of his laughter, the faint vibration of his music in the air. All of it was proof that death had not conquered him. Love had. She could feel it in her bones, in her pulse, in the quiet spaces between heartbeats. It was in every decision she made, in every memory she honored, in every smile she shared with friends, family, and the world. Sharon understood that grief and joy could coexist, that sorrow could carry within it the seed of hope, and that life could continue, vibrant and meaningful, even in the wake of loss. And in this knowledge, she felt a peace that was unshakable. It was not the absence of pain, but the presence of something far greater, a love that endures, that transforms, that illuminates. She could see now how every ordinary gesture had been extraordinary, how every sacrifice had been seen, appreciated, and immortalized in his final words. She understood the depth of her own strength, the sacredness of the life they had built together, and the responsibility and privilege of carrying that legacy forward. The camera could linger over these moments, over the sunlit photos, over the ring resting beside her hand, over the quiet, steady beat of her heart, each image a testament to life, love, and endurance. Sharon whispered one final thought aloud, a vow and a recognition intertwined. "I will live, I will love, and I will carry us forward, always." And in the soft swell of music, in the echo of a life so brilliantly lived, in the quiet aftermath of goodbye, it was clear that Ozzy's final act of love had not ended, but had transformed. From grief to gratitude, from loss to liberation, from silence to song. It was a legacy that would never fade, a light that would never dim, a love that would never die. The Prince of Darkness had left the world with more than music. He had left it with light.